Well, you know, I was gonna try and write a script for this, and then it just ended up being so much work. I just figured I'd kind of try and speak from the heart, see how that goes while I have a cigar, kind of just talk to the camera about something that I enjoy and whatnot. Did I forget my cutter? Alright. Well, that's not gonna stop me. Something I used to like to do when I was in college, especially to try and make friends in my older years, even though I'm like 22. Speaking like I'm an old man right now, was I'd invite people, neighbors over, to have a drink and a cigar and just talk about life and talk about things we enjoy and just to get to know them. It was a good icebreaker. And ever since I graduated, it's kind of been difficult to do that, because the older you get, the more you realize people are kind of more self-absorbed into their own lives. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I'm not saying I'm innocent of it. I'm definitely been like on my own kind of arc of I need to do things to improve myself. I need to focus on my own goals, and I need to focus on my work and trying to further level myself up in life, essentially. But what I've been forgetting to doing every now and again is to just take time and enjoy the moment, being able to just talk. And this is kind of why I want to do this right now. It gives me a chance to talk about things I like. And the first thing that I want to talk about is a show that's been on my mind for the past, looking back at it now, past 2 years, 2 or 3 years, essentially. And the show I'm talking about is Arcane. My introduction to this show was sophomore year of college. I think I was 19 at the time, and it was the first semester. And I went to Purdue. And those of you who know Purdue, you know it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, West Lafayette, Indiana. And it's basically just the college and then the cornfields. And that was it. And there's not really much to do there, so it's really hard to kind of keep your mind off a lot of the school pressures that are going on, especially with the major I was in. I was a computer engineer during my undergrad, and man, let me tell you something. If you're any type of engineer, you know that is not a subject matter to joke about. It is difficult, it's a lot of work, it's time consuming, you need to put in a lot of effort, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. It's one of those majors, no matter how intelligent you think you are, it will always humble you. So, a guy like me, I did good in high school. I was a straight A student, and going into college, I was so confident that I was going to perform well and I was going to exceed expectations. And the first year of college, I did do that. But Purdue, I don't know if this is every engineering school, but Purdue specifically has this thing called first year engineering, where essentially you take a bunch of general courses, and they're not exactly engineering related, but you take some like science courses, some humanity courses, some math courses, like kind of like a high school schedule. And I did fine, I made Dean's List freshman year, and I was like, all right, if this is kind of what the college scenario is going to be like, then smooth sailing from here. But man, I was so wrong. I was so wrong. Sophomore year came about, and that's when you actually get to pick your engineering discipline. That first semester into my actual major was a huge wake-up call that no matter how smart I am, there's always going to be someone smarter, and you don't know everything. No matter how hard you try, sometimes it just doesn't work out. I remember studying for my Circuits Fundamentals, Course 1. They called it ECE 2K1. It might be Electricity Fundamentals 1 or Circuits 1. I don't remember. It was my first circuits course. And when I studied, I understood the material, but come test day, all that information just left my brain. And I got the lowest score in that major, like out of my peers. I got a 0%. That hurt. I've put in so many hours studying for a test, and I didn't perform the way I wanted. Now, imagine that with like 6 different courses. So I think I was taking anywhere from like 14 to 18 credit hours that first semester, which is, don't do that. And every single one of my courses, I felt this way. Like, no matter how much I tried, no matter how much effort I put into this major, and how much passion I try to have for it, I just didn't seem to be performing how I wanted to. And I was surrounded by these highly intelligent kids. Like, they could just solve problems like that without barely studying, and I couldn't do that. And that got to my head. I kept ending up like comparing myself to these kids and just kind of being like, what am I even doing here? Do I belong here? Should I even be an engineer? Should I even stick with this? Am I smart enough for this? Am I good enough to be an engineer? Do I even deserve to be at this school that's known for engineering? It got to my head. Also affected my sleep schedule, and I ended up like going to bed stupid late and waking up stupid late. I wasn't eating right. I didn't really take my workout seriously. I started to gain weight. Right now I'm actually trying to cut weight from all the damage I did during college, and it's working. But that's besides the point. That's a story for another time. It got to my head, and I felt really isolated and alone. And that was partially, and a good percentage of it, my fault, because I ended up seeing that I wasn't performing the way I wanted to in school. So every day I just kind of locked myself in my room, and I studied and I studied, and I did literally nothing else. I just studied. And I felt like I had no one. And no one understood why I was putting that much effort in when everybody else didn't need to do that, and they seemed to be performing well. And that also added to the pressure on my shoulders. I'm saying all this because a lot of what I'm saying right now, I feel like people can relate to, and is some of the things that Arcane deals with. Is that feeling of trying again, and it just not working out. And you have to face the consequences of basically what feels like your effort is now backstabbing you. One of the few things that kind of kept me going that semester was being able to play video games with some of my friends back in Florida. Also, huge shout out to them. And Arcane. And I actually ended up watching Arcane because two of my friends ended up recommending me that show and kind of forcing me to watch it. See, I had my doubts at first because it's based off League of Legends. And look, it's League of Legends. Nobody can take League of Legends seriously. So when I saw that the show was based off League of Legends, I was like, oh, it's another video game adaptation. It's already going to be bad. Oh, it's based off an even worse video game, so double bad. Oh, it's biased towards people that play League of Legends, so triple bad. And those thoughts kind of just stacked up onto one another. And I kind of just stayed away from that show for the longest of time. But then I started reading these reviews. And they were critically acclaimed, highly appraised by audiences outside of League players, and also apparently comparable to other masterpieces of animation. I think the thing, if I'm looking back on it, that convinced me to watch the show, or at least made me be like, come on, there's no way. My friend said that it was comparable to Avatar: The Last Airbender. And that made me go, really? Really? Nah, I don't believe it. I gave it a shot. That comment alone made me go, alright, I gotta see what all the hype's about. It came at such a perfect point in my life, and it almost like described perfectly kind of what I was going through with like each of the characters. I'll kind of set up what the story's about with like the first 3 episodes of Arcane. On the first episode, I was immediately hooked because I loaded it up, and it starts with this scene on like a sort of bridge, and it's on fire, and you see these cops that are called enforcers in the show, and this kind of dark, ominous lullaby is like playing in the background, and the lullaby is like sung by a child. It's kind of echoing, and it pans over to these 2 small little girls, and it ends up being one of the younger girls singing that song. And these 2 girls are sisters. The older sister, a little bit more mature than the younger sister, is kind of understanding what's going on. But the younger sister has her eyes covered as she sings the lullaby, and I think the older sister was telling her to do that so she wouldn't be scared. Younger sister ends up uncovering her eyes because the older sister stops walking. And the older sister kind of just like stares forward, witnessing what's going on. And the younger sister is looking up to the older sister, kind of seeing like, following her footsteps and seeing how she should react. The younger sister, we're gonna call her Powder. That's what her name is the first 3 episodes. And then the older sister, Vi, have this dynamic. Initially in the first 3 episodes, just from that scene alone, seeing like the way Powder looks up to Vi for guidance, kind of shows how the dynamic is between them. Powder's following Vi's footsteps, and we see this man going hand-to-hand combat with one of the enforcers. 2 little girls meet up with this man. The man approaches them. Vi looks at this man with the gauntlets. His name's Vander. Essentially, without using any dialogue, is asking, hey, where are our parents? And he just looks down, and you see 2 dead bodies. Vi just breaks down Powder is just there to kind of comfort her because she's a young kid and doesn't really know what to do. Vander takes Vi and Powder into his own hands, takes him away from the bridge. Vi sees the enforcers also walking away to the opposite side of wherever those enforcers came from, and she has this like look of determination as if she's gonna get revenge one day. And it just, the scene ends there. It's like, I think it's like 2 to 3 minutes, and it just set up the story of the show so well from those first 2 or 3 minutes. And immediately I just ended up hooked. I had to keep going and see what happens. So the first episode, Vi and Powder are now grown up, and now they're with a gang of kids, Milo and Clagger, and they're essentially doing heists to be able to live normally and kind of make some cash to buy food and whatnot, because they're from a poor side of the region they live in called the Undercity, and where the enforcers came up from that initial scene was called Topside. That's what the Undercity calls the like rich, all's well, gold, rich. They call that Topside. So this gang of kids, they're doing a job at Topside, and they were supposed to go rob some scientist's apartment of like goodies to sell back at the Undercity. And while they're doing this, Powder ends up making a mistake. She drops one of these like blue stones, and it causes this massive explosion, and now they need to run away. And as the enforcers are coming after them, they have to make a last-minute escape through this like sewage pipe, dispenser pipe, I don't know what it's called. They have to go through that in order to escape the enforcers. And once they get back to the Undercity with their stuff, now there's some people in the Undercity who want a taste of what they have, and they want to start a fight so they can steal whatever those kids stole. Powder can't fight. She's too young, and she doesn't have the proper size to go against these other kids from the Undercity. She ends up running away with like a lot of stuff, and one of her like handmade grenades that she was trying to get to work didn't work, and she was forced to throw away all the stuff they stole, or like what she had of the haul, causing a distraction and running away. Milo gets really upset and mad. He doesn't like that, and he calls her a jinx, and saying that every time they end up going on a job, she jinxes every single job. Does that sound familiar? Imagine trying so hard to contribute to the group, but no matter what you do, it just doesn't pay off. It's like your efforts are backstabbing you. As we kind of go through the episode, we're introduced to one of the villains of the Undercity called Silco, and essentially what he wants to do is he wants to free the Undercity by any means necessary. So he has this new chemical drug called Shimmer, which essentially empowers you and kind of makes you into this like kind of Hulk thing. And he wants to instill fear into Topside. He wants to gain their respect through fear. And it's later introduced within either episode 2 or episode 3 that Vander and Silco were once close. And towards the end of episode 3, Silco captures Vander to try and make him understand what he's trying to do for the Undercity and free them of Topside. Milo, Clagger, Vi end up trying to save Vander. And Vi tells Powder to stay behind because she's not ready for that type of job, especially the amount of danger. And that's all that Vi has left, so she obviously didn't want to risk Powder's life. But Powder doesn't want to listen. She wants to contribute. She wants to help so bad. She wants to feel important. She wants to feel needed. So she had some of these gemstones from the apartment they did the job at. And she makes this like little monkey bomb. And she ends up going to the site where Vander is. And she lets the monkey bomb go. And it accidentally kills Clagger. It accidentally kills Milo. And inadvertently kills Vander because he's forced to take some of this shimmer drug to empower himself to fight Silco's goons and save Vi, because Vi is injured. And Vander, trying to save Vi, ends up sacrificing himself. And Powder's all excited, sees Vi, and she's like, did you see that? My monkey bomb finally worked. And she sees Vander's dead body, the fire, the explosion, and it starts kicking in that, oh, I screwed up. And Vi loses it and ends up smacking her, yelling at her, and Powder is just distraught. Vi leaves, and Vi tried to come back for Powder, but one of the enforcers ended up sedating her, and they essentially arresting her as a mercy to save her from Silco. And Powder thought that Vi essentially abandoned her, and she latches on to the only thing that seemed to have been there at her lowest moment, which is Silco. And this is when Powder no longer is Powder, she's Jinx. She tries to create this identity to protect herself and be strong, because everybody always thought that she could never have any redeemable quality. I could sit here all night and ramble on about the rest of the show, but I'd be here for at least another 3 hours talking about this show. The point I'm trying to make here, just introducing those first 3 episodes, is the storytelling and the visuals of the storytelling and the way that the story is told is, even though it's in a fantasy land, is almost realistic. It feels real, like you connect with the character stories so well. And it cut deep in here, because I felt every character's pain throughout the show, villains included. And there's not really a good guy. They feel human. It's human. We all make mistakes. That doesn't make us bad guys. It's just some of our mistakes are worse than others. The next thing I want to talk about is the music. Look, I'm a musician, so there's definitely some bias here, but man, the music in this show just elevates the emotion to this whole new level. And the example I want to use here is the fight between Jinx and Vi in Season 2.
To ashes and blood. To ashes and blood.
It's gut-wrenching. The music adds so much emotion. And you see these two sisters who once fiercely loved each other are now actually trying to kill each other. And the way it's shot and the way the music's kind of with the beat of the scenes and the way the combat's working, it's phenomenal. And you sit there and you're watching this unfold, and the music just adds this depth of almost disparity and almost like this needs to happen. And if it doesn't, things will fall apart. That's one of my favorite scenes that the music kind of elevates the storytelling of the show. The other scene I want to talk about that music uses to elevate the show is the scene where Jinx essentially starts the war against Topside and the Undercity. The song that plays in that background, you can just feel how heartbroken Jinx is that she's still not accepted for who she is by her own sister. And she's fully given into disparity and what she thinks she needs to become in order to be the strongest version of herself.
Could have been.
The music just adds this layer of emotional depth that makes you feel what the characters are feeling during every scene. It doesn't use dialogue either, and it's just so well executed. It makes you connect with the characters more. Now, that's the second topic. The last topic I want to talk about is episode 7, season 2, because I feel like it deserves its own section of this video.
T'es la meilleure chose qui m'est arrivée, mais aussi la pire chose qui m'est arrivée. Ce jour où je t'ai rencontré, j'aurais peut-être préféré que ce jour ne soit jamais arrivé.
Episode 7, Season 2 takes place in a parallel universe. When the fight between Jinx and Vi was happening, there was a scene where Echo, the kid that gave the tip for the initial job in Season 1, Jace, the person that the kids were trying to steal from, and Heimerdinger, Jace's mentor, were all kind of in this area of their laboratory where the hex gates are powered, which is essentially, he uses those gemstones but a more refined version of it, and essentially is like put in these systems to create a source of beam of energy to transport things from one place to another. And Echo's there because the place where his people are, they have this massive tree in the Undercity, which is essentially a beacon of hope because it's one of the few things that can grow life there that people know of, is getting corrupted by the Hextech technology. So they go to investigate this, and as they're investigating this, this anomaly appears, and it essentially just splits every single one of them into different dimensions. Heimerdinger and Echo end up in the same dimension, but Jace ends up in a dimension where Hextech completely takes over, and what the negative consequences were. And Echo and Heimerdinger are in a world where Hextech never existed, because in this world, when that explosion happened, Vi died, and the Enforcers saw that, and they were just sad seeing a child die due to the science of the technology that Jace was trying to discover. So they just banned it. And you see this world where Topside and the Undercity are living in harmony. Nobody's going at each other's throats, and there's basically zero pollution and corruption. And Jinx isn't Jinx. She's an adult version of Powder. And Echo first sees this, and he kind of has that survival instinct of trying to fight Powder. But Powder's confused because she looks healthier. She looks happier. She looks more content with herself. She's not trying to be somebody she's not. And through this episode, you kind of see Echo growing closer to Powder in a way that's more than just friends. There's a scene where they're doing their whole, like, Echo and Heimerdinger are trying to figure out a way to get back home, and Echo finds these shards from the explosion of the Hextech gems and essentially uses that to recreate the anomaly to help them get back home. But Heimerdinger basically saw the chemistry between Echo and Powder as they were trying to build this, and when they finally completed it, Heimerdinger told Echo to go have some free time, enjoy the world a little bit longer, and enjoy the party at the science convention, which Powder mentioned earlier in the beginning of episode 7. Echo goes to this party. Powder comes out and the soundtrack plays, and they end up having this beautiful dance together. And the song that plays during this, it's written in French. I mean, I think it roughly translates to "My greatest enemy is your love," or something along those lines. I don't actually know the full translation. And you see the connection they're having. And then after the dance, they go on this balcony and they share a kiss. And it's so heartbreakingly beautiful because you see what could have been. You saw what could have been. That there is a good version of Powder. That she doesn't have to be bad. And what's heartbreaking about this episode is that he needs to go back to his world to essentially stop the war that's going against Topside, Undercity, and a whole other side arc I don't really want to get into because I can talk about that character in its own video alone. He sacrificed everything he could have ever wanted to save his people. And it's just so heartbreakingly beautiful seeing what could have been. That episode hurt. It was tragic. It was so tragic. And it was one of the few times a cartoon made me cry. And I never related to an episode so hard in my life. Because you think about these scenarios in your head all the time of what could have been, what if I did something differently, and seeing that things can be different gave me both a semblance of hope and a semblance of, I wouldn't say sadness, more like confusion. Almost, like grieving almost. And that episode just left such an impact on me. And as the show ended, I kept rewatching the show over and over again because both seasons came at points in my life where I just wasn't doing good. And I related to these animated characters so much. The second season came out when I graduated college and all my friends had jobs and I didn't. I was unemployed. I was busting my rear end trying to find a job. I mean, thank God now I have one. I got an offer recently, but those first few months, man, I was not in a good mental space. And both seasons came out at a time in my life